pulled over search without cause and humiliated. But when her husband arrived, the real confrontation began. Angela Hayes adjusted the rear-view mirror of her silver sedan, the hum of the highway fading, as she turned onto a quieter road in suburban Dallas. The evening air felt heavy, and her sequin gown shimmered faintly in the dim streetlights. She had just left a fundraiser event, a night spent supporting a local community center. She deeply cared about. Angela was proud of the work they were doing. But more than anything, she was looking forward to getting home to her family. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was her husband, Malcolm Hayes, the newly appointed police commissioner of Dallas County. Angela smiled softly. Be home. Soon, she murmured to herself, not bothering to pick up the call. Then the flash of red and blue lights in her rearview mirror caught her attention. To police cruiser. Angela's brows furrowed as she slowed her car and pulled over to the side of the road. Her mind raced for a reason. She wasn't speeding. She hadn't rolled to any stop signs. She wasn't even on her phone. Maybe it's just a routine stop, she thought, rolling down her window. As the officer approached, the officer, a tall man with a stern expression, didn't waste time. License and registration, he said curtly. Angela handed over her documents without hesitation. Good evening, officer. May I ask why I'm being stopped? The man glanced at her license before looking back at her. His tone clipped. We got a call about a vehicle matching this description involved in suspicious activity in the area. Angela's heart skipped a beat. Suspicious activity, she repeated, her voice steady despite the unease creeping in. Step out of the car, ma'am, the officer said, ignoring her question. Angela hesitated. Excuse me, I'm not sure I understand. Step out of the car now, he interrupted, his tone firmer. Another cruiser pulled up behind the first, and two more officers got out their flashlights, cutting through the dark. Angela's hand trembled as she unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the door. She kept her hands visible just as her husband had taught her. I'm complying, she said, keeping her voice calm but firm. But I'd like to know why I'm being treated this way. Her calm demeanor seemed to agitate the officers further. One began searching her car without asking permission, rifling through the back seat and trunk. The other two stood close, watching her every move. Angela's heart pounded. This wasn't right. She had nothing to hide, but the way they treated her like she was guilty of something was humiliating. But Angela wasn't the kind of woman to cower. I'd like to call my husband, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. One officer scoffed. You can do that after we're done here. Angela's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She didn't want to escalate the situation, and instead she silently prayed that someone would intervene, that this would end before it spiraled further. But little did she know the situation was about to take a turn that no one could have predicted. Angela stood by her car, the cool night air brushing against her arms as she watched the officers rummage through her belongings. Her perfectly organized trunk, filled with boxes of brochures and event materials from the fundraiser, was being treated like a crime scene. They pulled out items, inspecting them as if they might uncover something sinister. One officer held up a stack of pamphlets. What's all this? For Angela's voice remained calm but firm. I just left the fundraiser. Those are brochures for the community center we're supporting. He stared at her, his expression unreadable, before tossing the stack back into the trunk. Without a word, the second officer, a younger man with a nervous energy, approached her. Ma'am, are there any weapons, drugs, or anything illegal in this vehicle? No, officer. Angela replied, her patience wearing thin. I told you I've done nothing wrong. I'd appreciate if you could explain why I'm being treated this way. Her composure only seemed to irritate the more. Wet. Just doing our job, the older officer barked, slamming the trunk shut. Angela glanced at her phone, which was still on the passenger seat, buzzing again with an incoming call from Malcolm. May I retrieve my phone to call my husband now? She asked. The officers exchanged glances. No sudden movements, one of them said, as if she were a threat. Angela fought the urge to roll her eyes, but complied, carefully reaching into the car to grab her phone. The officers seemed almost disappointed when nothing about her behavior justified their suspicions. But they weren't done yet. We running your plates and license, one said, stepping away. Angela crossed her arms, watching as the second cruiser's spotlight illuminated her car. The scrutiny, the assumptions, the complete disregard for her dignity. It was infuriating, but she kept her cool, knowing that any sign of frustration could be twisted into a reason to escalate further. She dialed Malcolm's number with steady fingers. He picked up almost immediately. Angela, are you okay? I've been calling. She cut him off. Malcolm, I'm pulled over by the police, and they're searching my car without cause. I need you here now. Malcolm's tone shifted instantly, his voice filled with both concern and "Authority, where are you? I'm coming." Angela gave him her location, her voice faltering just slightly as the weight of the situation settled in. "Please hurry." As she entered the call, she noticed the officers watching her closely, their postures stiffening. They didn't know who she had called, but something about her confidence seemed to unnerve them. Minutes passed, each one feeling longer than the last. Angela remained silent, standing tall despite the humiliation. She noticed a few cars slowing down as they drove by, their occupants rubbernecking to see what was happening. And then she heard the sound of a car pulling up. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop nearby, and the driver's door opened. Malcolm stepped out, his tall frame exuding authority, his face a mask of restraint-brained anger. But what happened next was something neither Angela nor the officers could have anticipated. Malcolm Hayes wasn't the type of man to lose his temper easily. Years of experience as a public servant, and most recently the police commissioner, had taught him the value of control, even in the most heated situations. But tonight, seeing his wife standing on the side of the road surrounded by officers with a look of defiance masking her unease, something inside him burned. He stepped out of the SUV and closed the door firmly, the sound cutting through the tense air. The officers glanced at him, their guarded expressions betraying their surprise at his confident stride. Malcolm was dressed sharply in a tailored suit, his police badge clipped to his belt and glinting under the street lights. "Good evening," he said, his voice calm but edged with authority. "I'm Malcolm Hayes, Dallas County Police Commissioner. Some want to explain to me why my wife is being detained and her vehicle searched." Without cause, the older officer, clearly the one in charge, straightened his posture, but didn't quite meet Malcolm's eyes. "Sir, we're conducting an investigation. We received a report of suspicious activity involving a car matching this description." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "Suspicious activity in a sedan driven by a well-dressed woman coming from a charity event. You do realize you're speaking to Angela Hayes, my wife?" The younger officer shifted, uncomfortably glancing at his partner. The older officer cleared his throat. "We weren't aware of her identity, so we were just following protocol." "Protocol," Malcolm repeated,